That's all right. Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is June 28th, 2022. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Carl Kissin. Carl, where are you calling in from?
New York City, Upper West Side of Manhattan, um, block and a half from Central Park.
How cool is that? The first question is, what's the best thing for a human being?
So I thought we were going to warm up with, with something easy, but we're getting difficult right away. But I knew you would be, Jerry, and uh, and you said I could take a pause, take a breath, and
Oh, taking a pause
respond.
and a
What
breath.
is the best thing for a human being? You know, Jerry, I just did a show called Jewish in an Hour. And while I realize it's different for every human being, I'm going to go a little bit Jewish on you, although I'm sure these philosophies are in common with many religions. To me, it's family, being surrounded by loved ones, living in your body, meaning enjoying sex, touch, laughter. I And then you could get a little more philosophical, intellectual, fulfilling your purpose, finding a why, a reason. I do feel good that I think I found mine, but I don't know that I have all the best human being things.
That
Uh,
was good. No, that was a good summary. I really appreciate that. And I love family. The easy answer, and I get 80% of the time is love. Well, that's fine, but you were able to suss it out. This is really what it's all about. Your hunch, you sussing it out. What's your
well,
favorite? Yeah, go ahead.
Jerry, before you go on to the next question, I find that interesting, and I want to address love. Although, stop me interrupting if you think no, I want to get to a lot of questions with Carl.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I like the concept of love, but I don't know that I feel God. If I don't have that, my life is meaningless. I really There was a point in my life where someone I knew said, the only peace in my day is when late at night everybody else is asleep and I'm paying the bills. And I am just the opposite. I remember thinking that when my household was at the most chaotic, I was my most delighted. When my son was young and he would scream, he would laugh. My partner would say, you have to do this, and they're just make this meal, and now we have to clean up and go here, and it was just mayhem. And I loved being in the mayhem and being busy. And it wasn't like romantic, like, oh my God, I'm so in love, even though I did love the mother of my child and my son. But it was more about there's theater going on here. There's action. There's life. There's motion.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. I recalled seeing Paulo Coelho wrote The Alchemist, which is, 5,000-year-old story, and he peddled it for 20 years and then became the new age pop novelist selling, everybody gave it as I saw him speak once and they go, so do you sit under a tree when you're writing this? He goes, no, I got to be in an office with fax machines going off and phones going off to write something that seems calming or centered. So that was really well put. I relate to what you just said.
Thank you.
What's your favorite form of how information comes into you?
I learned late in life, but it's also a relatively recent innovation. When I say innovation, it's not like the microchip. It's not this amazing transformative thing. That I love listening to books on tape, and I realize that that's probably part of a broader thing, that I like getting my information from other people. So
Yeah.
when it's on the page, I'm less likely to engage with it, even though I do read things on the page and I read newspapers. Um, but listening to a book, listening to smart people, not connected to an audiobook. Just if I think, ooh, Jerry is smart and he's talking about a field in which he's an expert, I love taking that in. It's one of the few times I get quiet and listen more than I talk, because I'm known as kind of overly vocal. And but speaking of which, how long do we have today so I can make sure my voice lasts this long?
We usually shoot for 90 minutes, but if you're
Good, that's what I thought.
start losing it, you just say, "Hey, I'm getting worn down," and we can wrap it up. But
But I
yeah.
thought, no, I had a solo show 2 days ago. Shut my voice down yesterday to recover, mostly back, and as long as I remember not to scream for the entire 90 minutes, I should be good. Um,
Super cool. But the next part is, you answered that well, is why do you think humans collect or gather information?
my instinct is to say, and sometimes I go on instinct because my background is as an improviser, is it's protective
Yeah.
and it's evolutionary. And what I mean by that is the more you know, the more may be able to protect yourself. If you're aware invaders are coming from the north, oh, that's because I talked to a lot of people. And my friend Joe said, hey, I was on the road the other day and I saw invaders. I said hi to them. What are you doing? They said, oh, we're going to Carl's house. We'll be there in 2 days. So getting information protects you. Getting information, the part that's evolutionary, is it enables you to perhaps be better than your competition, to pass your genes on. Oh, I know when this attractive person is going to be available. I may get to procreate with them. I think it's any number of
Yeah.
things to protect, enhance, but we certainly do seem to have um, done well as a species with the big brain over the big brawn
Yeah.
quotient.
But you sort of answered this, Carl, but is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented?
I'm going to go with innate. And the
Yeah.
reason I'm going to go with innate is an infant pays attention to mom. Um, a fully functioning neurotypical infant is constantly, what are the signs? What am I getting from the face? What do those words mean? What does she need? How can I get my needs met? How can I get more information? I think that just comes in. I think you hardly have to learn that, like, this is the source right now and I better pay attention to it. Even though probably that innate quality starts off the process of forever being aware, I got to keep learning.
Yeah.
Uh, or I had enough learning and I'll watch the Mets game. that,
Nice.
that's your alternative.
That
And
was
even
good.
then, you learn.
I like that. Um, do thoughts create emotions?
Yes. And of course, you probably want me to go on.
No, 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 I don't. Some of these you don't have to go on.
Oh, okay.
Let's keep going because they will come back around. Because I loved you using the word instinct. That's really what I'm after here is hunches, guesses. It's not like some of these are sort of neuroscientific questions or, you know, they're questions that you might go, well, I'm not qualified in that area. It's more like your guess or hunch. So I loved you using the word instinct. I don't
And
know what I
even the areas where I am qualified, I barely know what I'm talking about. So you may as well just go with me winging it.
well, well, let me quote Marshall McLuhan. You mean my whole fallacy is wrong? um, I don't know what I think until I fill in the blank. What would you say there? I don't know what I think until I
get incredibly neurotic and spin around in circles at least 1,000 times, weighing both sides, and finally, because either somebody's forcing me to, or I'm hungry, or something, I make a decision. Now, um,
Yeah, wait, let me tell you, that's
yeah.
that's Epistrophe by Thelonious Monk. You ever see him? He would stand and walk in a circle round and round, and that's what Epistrophe is.
I
And
did
it
not.
is like, yeah, I just spin around. Can humans
Epistrophe. Okay, I want to take notes.
Yeah, no, you're can humans think without language?
I I think so, but this is again a neuroscience question, and I'm trying to go into like, wait, what have I learned about this? And I'm not recalling it because um, I think the thinking would be very id driven. Is my guess? It'd be very primal, like food, protect, um, lust. I don't think without language your you're thinking necessarily deep thoughts. That's again my answer, and I'm sticking to it.
No, that's good. And Carl, realize I'm not holding you to any of these answers either. Like my mom, when I said, "Can I interview you?" She said, "Yeah, but tomorrow I might answer everything differently." I said, "That's all right." So Chomsky says a language is not just words, it's culture, tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down? What do you do?
I might want to reroute your question, Jerry. Um, actually, let me think about it for a moment. First of all, I got distracted as soon as you said Noam Chomsky because he can be so overwhelming, and in his extreme radicalness and politics. And then of course there are two Noam Chomskys. There is the psychological language Noam
Linguist.
Chomsky, and then there is like I despise every country on the face of the earth, Noam Chomsky, and here's what's completely wrong with them and how we should live. Um, so um, ask the question again, please, if you would.
What do you do when language breaks down?
I probably keep talking. I probably
Nice. That is good.
I probably keep going at it. So if there are times that I will find myself in a discussion with somebody I'm involved with, and I think, oh, I didn't phrase that well, or I thought I phrased it well, but then I see on their face they're completely offended by what I just said. And I think, how do I dig myself out of that? Well, I need new language, or I need to reframe that language I just said. And I need to figure out how to put a different angle on it. And my sister made fun of me. You brought in your mom. I'm going to bring in my sister, and I'm sure my mom will get into the conversation at some point. But my sister once got exacerbated with me, and she said, "Carl, you don't need a metaphor for everything." Because I always want to say, like, if instead of just saying, "Oh, I'm thirsty," I always like want to explain it. Well, it's like as if my mouth were a desert, and the desert has been parched for 3 years now by harsh sun, and it's like my sister said, "Carl, you can just tell me you're thirsty." I understand the concept of thirst, but some concepts are more elaborate. So, I give that one for humor, but some concepts are more elaborate. And I think you do need to keep going for what's that perfect image? What's the comparison? And the reason I like comparisons is they sometimes make something more vivid. I mean, authors use them for that reason. Um, but beyond
Carl,
just
all language is
yeah,
metaphorical. Yeah, and I mean, it's beautiful. You're just a wordsmith. So these are two questions from Turing in the 50s. First one is no, is thinking a function of the soul?
Now, given that it's a Turing question, you're not going to persecute me afterwards,
No, there's
regardless of
no
how brilliant my
there's no
answer might be.
yeah, there's no Scientology rod underneath your laptop that you're going to touch and it's going.
Okay. Again, I apologize. Every time I make a joke, it's like, well, Jerry's question's too hard to remember after the joke.
No, it's
Question again, please.
is thinking a function of the soul?
In a way, yes, if you equate the soul with the brain. If you
Yeah.
say your brain and your thoughts are essentially your soul or your essence, then yes.
That's good. Let's go on because everything will come full circle. You'll see. We'll be bringing stuff up. The second Turing question is
At this pace, Jerry, soon you're going to see like in the old Star Treks when the computers went nuts. Like there's going to be like smoke is going to come out.
the second Turing question is, can machines think?
I'm going to be old-fashioned. I don't think so. I think they can be programmed to an incredible level of sophistication. I'm aware that in the news just a few days ago, somebody claimed they had come up with a sentient computer. Now, the interesting part to me is, well, are we just very sophisticated computers, and maybe computers will get more sophisticated than we are, just as it took time before a computer could beat somebody in chess. But now IBM's Watson can, or Deep Thought can, Deep Blue, whatever the different names of IBM's top supercomputers are. So maybe we are just way more interesting processing units at this point, and computers, while faster at numbers, at three-dimensional imaging, at a number of things right now, maybe they need to catch up to us in the other ways of processing information. And at that point, it will be the equivalent of thinking. But that brings us back to the Alan Turing question of a soul, which makes it now more interesting to me, because if thinking is just neurons firing and a chip can do it, does that take something magical away from a human? And that leads to the science fiction hypothetical that if you were able to replace my body completely with robotics and chips, would I still feel? Would I care? Is caring even a kind of programmed response that we learn from the time we're young? Like, oh, that will get us something. If I say, I love you, Jerry, Jerry's going to be nicer to me. So is it come back to what I said early on, that it's evolutionary and will help you survive, will help you achieve things? You know, there are those who cynically say Mother Teresa's not an altruist. She just does that because doing good makes her feel good. And anybody who makes an argument uses that voice, as you know. So, you know, Jerry, I see the effect you have on people. You're just going to get me lost in
No,
thought and circles of
oh,
thought.
you're doing great. It reminded me of when I saw Christopher Hitchens like with 60 liberals in a room dissing Mother Teresa for like 2 hours. And this woman at the end went, didn't Mother Teresa do anything good? And Christopher Hitchens went, no. And it's like, come on. Okay. So
By
do
the
you?
way, Barry, the show I did on Sunday, there was a Christopher Hitchens reference.
There you go.
In
See, I
passing.
knew.
So
We
it's
had a
all
lot, man. I was cracking up watching your videos. I was just going, "This guy is amazing."
oh,
So,
thank
do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
meaning, and at the same time, I would say pursuing meaning probably makes me somewhat happy. Um, and again, just like I said about love earlier, I said something was more important to me than love, and I forget what what it was.
It
Purpose
was
was it
family,
family,
life in the body,
activity, right?
fulfillment,
Uh,
finding purpose. You
so
had a good that was a good list.
thank you. So um, similarly, I'm going to have so many senior moments. What was I on about, Jerry? Let me
Well,
see how you're listening.
you more pursue meaning over than happiness. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
because but again, I think I think they dovetail to me. I think
Yeah.
the things that are meaningful to me, comedy, camaraderie, um, certain amount of altruism, way short of Mother Teresa, and I don't care if Christopher Hitchens puts me down for it or says, that it's totally atheistic, pragmatic, because maybe it is. Um, Coming back to that evolutionary thing I talked about earlier. But um, yeah, I think meaning is my version of happiness. But again, happiness is not something I'm necessarily going like, woo, I want to be happy. I once heard Conan O'Brien, the audience was whooping and they were going, woo, and they were shouting, and Conan goes, I'm not a woohoo kind of guy. And, and nor am I. I'm
Yeah.
rarely a woohoo kind of guy. So I like I do like meaning. I like interesting
Yeah.
intellectual things. But at the same time, physical touch. I love just walking around the park late at night and seeing the skyscrapers, seeing the trees, being out in the air after being stuck in my computer all day, my elderly computer that we talked about in the beginning on the rarely used Chrome.
But, Carl, there's one thing is there's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but that one you got right.
Oh, I would like a grade at the end, Jerry, and
But this is now let me tell you, because I put into context is I got the question from Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And he says meaning lasts and happiness doesn't necessarily last. But it's all about, and you use the word so well. Let me reroute your question. See, I'm after readjusting my questions and hearing how people react to the question, and then the answer is fine, but it's more these jumping off points. And this woman a couple months ago, because he's at the beginning, I have this, is it more this or more that? Well, I know it's both and it depends, but I'm just sort of getting your inclination, and people sometimes it's equal, and that's fine. But she said to me so funny about like rerouting your question. Your verb was great. She says, the word more doesn't function in your question. And I thought that was brilliant. I was like, oh, you're right.
um, well, I like the idea of what you're saying. I was talking to somebody just the other day about a Star Trek principle, which is that Captain Kirk doesn't believe in the no-win situation. So perhaps rerouting the question is like saying, like, I won't be defeated by that question. I'm going to reroute it so I can have some kind of win or what feels like a win to me. I wanted to tell you a quick anecdote, even though I know you like the heavy
No, I like anecdotes. I welcome anecdotes, please.
sledgehammer
Yeah.
philosophical things. But when I said, "Oh no, I want a grade at the end," of course I'm joking. But when I was in college, I needed a certain certificate to be on the college radio station, and it was that you took this radio test that you knew like about broadcasting watts and different electrical things, and you studied for it and you got some kind of radio certification. And I took it in the city, some government office. And afterwards, the woman said to me, you wait for your results. And afterwards, the woman says, you passed. And I said, oh, fantastic. I said, I'm curious, what was my grade? And she said, I just tell people whether they pass or fail. And I said, but I worked really hard studying. I really like to know my grade. And I could not budge her. But it was important to me, like, I had put in the work, and
Right.
I wanted the reward of knowing you got a 90 or the interesting story of, like, you made by this much, you got one more question wrong, and we would have had to, take you away in chains,
You
for
would have went to
violations
radio
against the
DJ,
FCC.
yeah, you'd go
Uh,
to radio DJ purgatory.
be in a jail with George Carlin for saying the 7 words you can't say on television.
Does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we creating it?
First of all, I was immediately distracted by the word "more" because you said that people criticize the word "more." So
It is.
that's
It's a total bullshit question, so
that
don't worry.
becomes today's pink elephant in the room. It would be best not to think about pink elephants as soon as I hear "more." Does the brain create consciousness or become aware of the
Yeah,
consciousness?
do we detect it? Is it there, or do we create it? And I know it's both, but it's like you're sort of gravitate towards which side?
I think it becomes aware of it because I
Yeah.
think it's like a Piaget level of development. Like at first, it's just where can I get that nipple, um, and feed me, and then it's like things come online. Like I am separate from my mother. I am this person. I can do this. Um, and then before you know it, it's like, how do I get into a good college? And what kind of story do I need to tell them in my application? Um, and will they think I'm uh, um, trying too hard if I try hard to be funny, which I think I did. I would love to find my college essay. I think I toned it down, but I wish I had just gone full force.
Carl, you really evoked this. The kid goes up to the parent and goes, "Are you absolutely sure you won't support me for the rest of my life?" Now, now me and you laugh at it. We're at that age. Parents who have young kids now, they don't laugh at that joke. They go, "Oh, that's fucking too true. I can't laugh at that."
Yeah.
So Audre Lorde, the poet, says you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded and said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest? And again, just put in context a little, it's what tool do you gravitate towards? And it can be new and it can be for dismantling the master's house. It's just a general question. You know,
Whoa, that question took some turns, Jerry.
yeah,
Like because I thought you were going to ask me what tool do I use to dismantle the master's house, which you sort of
that's it.
did, but
That's it.
you broadened it in the middle to
Right.
say just what tools do you like, which is
Right,
like
right.
well, I
Yeah.
like
And
wrenches, but
yeah.
um,
But a tool can be non-tangible too. I know. I sometimes people get the question, and sometimes what I'm trying to say is overall throughout, I start some of these questions with cute quotes. You don't have to put them in context with the quote. It's basically what tool do you gravitate towards, but it is sort of like
well,
you have political activism in your blood. I can
yeah,
tell.
they're very different questions, Jerry.
Yeah.
The,
Yeah,
the,
well, I would
so
say then just what tool do you
the
gravitate towards?
tool the tool is easy. I
Yeah,
gravitate toward humor. That's the tool I use. Um, Occasionally, um, maybe the tool is just getting loud, being relentless. Um, but today I went to vote, Where's my I voted sticker? I don't know. It's somewhere in the house. It's a New York state primary
Yeah,
election, and well, you're in California, right? So
yeah.
you know.
We voted 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're voting as well. Okay. Um, and so you know, there was a person in front of me who the guy couldn't find her on the voter roll. And this started going on like 10 minutes. And I'm thinking, I am not going to stand here. I came in the middle of the afternoon when there should be virtually no one in here.
Yeah.
The advantage of a freelance life. And so I'm the person that speaks up. Like, everybody behind me was just like thumb twiddle, thumb twiddle. And I said, "Excuse me, sir, is it possible for you to keep researching this woman once there's no line?" But I'm the person that vocalizes. Um, and um, and I am the person that gets made fun of in movies for, I would like my dish the way I would like it, even though I don't usually say, put the dressing on the side, and can you make it without any onions? Although I don't do well with onions. Now I feel very Woody Allen. I don't do well with onions. It's not just the crying. It's the whole ethos of growing underground. It's very Dostoevsky. Um, so the uh, the tool for dismantling the master's house, the what I think is a completely different question, um, is sometimes that's pure violence. I'm not good with violence. That's not my tool. Um, and it is a tool that the master uses to oppress people, is police forces and militaries. um, and but the other tool can be thought and winning minds first, enough so to get people, unfortunately, maybe either to be violent or to be politically active to such a degree that violence is not needed. Whether you have the what unfortunately is probably more the exception to the rule, the nonviolent protest that works, the Martin Luther King, the Gandhi. Um, so that tool is community organizing and spreading ideas and winning people over with a thought, or exposing the truth, showing like you are oppressed, you are being screwed in every possible way financially by the system, or I'll make my girlfriend happy and say the patriarchy. She loves to say the word the patriarchy. And in case I show her this interview, I hope I get a kiss at this point.
Oh, but what you helped me right there immensely, Carl, is I didn't do this for 25 years and let me put this question in context. And then all of a sudden I thought I should. And you really made me go back to the old way. Just ask the question. And if they don't get it and they know they can, put it in their own context, that's fine.
Well,
Okay.
Jerry, part of why I do that is I'm a bit ADD. So if the question all of a sudden takes this sharp turn where it's like, oh, I thought the question was going there, like my mind, it's like, wait. I was going on Route 66, and I was saying if it goes more than 2,000 miles each day, or it goes, I'm sorry, more than 2,000 miles away. It goes from Chicago to LA, more than 2,000 miles all the way. Get your kicks on Route 66. And then you say, no, Carl, you got to go on I-95. It's like, I'm already in Joplin, Missouri.
This is so fun. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night? Good laugh,
Oh,
dude.
some of that I can't tell you. Oh, wait, I can't let the thing be in my head. That sticker. I'm probably wrong about everything. Um, many things. I worry, and as I say, one or two are unfortunately. I would love to say them, but they're too private. But they uh, have
Well,
to do with some family
just
issues.
name one. Just name one that you
Oh,
can.
no, I'm getting there, Jerry. Uh, uh, I I do epistology, but I won't disappoint you. At some point, I will stop and face the audience. Uh,
Yeah,
I worry about aging. I worry about my health, which is sort of to some extent one and the same, but it doesn't have to be. There are young people, obviously, that have physical problems, but um, I worry about time running out. I think because I want to do so much, and maybe even if I were 10 times more accomplished than I am, I think I would still worry about time running out. So I don't know that it's reflective of the level of my success, what I did or did not achieve. Um, but as a comparison, and here we go with my sister saying you didn't need it. In Amadeus, when we're seeing Mozart composing his own requiem for his death, like that is tremendously powerful to me. Like, he thinks he's dying, or he knows he's dying, or maybe he's going to die, and I want to write my own, opus. And I have so many shows in my head. Um, I sometimes give myself the complisalt, half compliment, half insult, of saying I'm an idea machine, but getting stuff done is the harder part, not having the ideas. And I have so many ideas for shows that I still want to write, that even if I wrote all of them in the next year, then I think, well, now I have 10 new ideas. And so it will always be an unfinished symphony, new classical reference from moving on from Mozart to Schubert, is it? This is the symphony that never finished. This is the symphony begun in D and then diminished. Anyway,
that
um,
was good.
thank you. I did this in my show on Sunday. I love just singing little songs inspired by where we are in our conversation. Maybe I'll do more of that as we keep going on.
Well, you're a good song. The one funny song you did was Soul Man, but the weirdest thing about Soul Man is Sam and Dave played Trump's inaugural party, and it's like you feel for them because they're black dudes, and they're like, "Hey, we need a gig. We're gonna play music," but it's like you turned on us. It's like, well, that's a hard thing to forgive them, and I do. But the thing about aging, I got to shoot these in really quick. The guy goes to the doctor and he says, "Doctor, I'm having trouble peeing." He says, "How old are you?" He says, 85. He said, "You peed enough."
Yes,
And
yes,
and
is
at
what
my
I've heard.
age, it's like this. I gotta pee when
Wait, you glitched.
I gotta pee when I'm peeing. I love to make comics laugh. Thank God you're laughing because usually comics don't like to have people try to make them laugh. I've
so so Jerry, I'm gonna go you one number higher. We've had number
yeah,
one jokes. I'm going to number two now.
yeah.
So doctor is at the old age home and he's making his rounds, and there are three men sharing a room, and says, Mr. Abrams, how are you today? He goes, not so good. I have terrible constipation. I haven't gone in 5 days. And doctor says, well, here's a pill. Hopefully this should make things okay. Mr. Johnson, how are you? Not good, doctor. I have terrible diarrhea, and it's just I feel ill. Well, let me give you a pill. And then he finally gets to Mr. Goldberg, and he says, Mr. Goldberg, how are you? And he says, I'm fantastic every morning. I have a perfect bowel movement at 7 a.m., beautifully shaped, regular, and not um, but I'm sorry. It's been a long time. Let me reset on the punchline. Mr. Goldberg, how are you? Not so good. Every morning, 7 a.m., I have a perfect bowel movement, beautifully shaped. Doesn't even smell bad. And the doctor goes, well, then what's the problem, Mr. Goldberg? Well, I don't get out of bed until 10 a.m.
No, this is good. At least we can both laugh. That's a great thing. Now, back to this Amadeus. I'm going to shoot in a question that comes.
Yeah, because I have more things I worry about at bed. I could go on.
No, no, we're leaving that. We're
Um,
leaving that question behind now. But I wanted to go to the Amadeus for a second because of him playing, composing his requiem for his death. The question is, Carl, can you forget to die?
Yes, because if it just hits you, if boom, the gunshot comes from, because you walk through the gang war on your local street, then it's like, oh, I forgot to be obsessing about it, thinking about it. So you die, but you sort of weren't thinking about it. But I have a feeling if sadly you have a terminal disease and it's months,
Yeah.
then you're aware, probably aware of your own death, and I don't think you can forget that. I think you can forget it for moments and distracted moments, and just like so much of our life being busy. Oh, let me, I still want to text this friend, and I want to apologize to this person,
Yeah.
and I want to, clear the slate, and do whatever. I want to come back to, I think I am going to tell you something I worry about at bed, which is I worry about my son, and due to circumstances that, I don't have as much influence in his life as I would like. And I worry about his well-being, and I think about him all the time.
Yeah.
But we don't have to get somber, because
No, but I'll go back to my mom too. Is at her wake service, I said, there's a lot of people in this room who worried that Dolores worried too much, because I think there's a fine line between worry and concern. So, people usually worry. Yeah, worry's not good, but really it's a form of concern. So we invent these words. So can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them? One of them.
So people tell me that I'm full of boo when I say that I remember something from 1 year old,
Yeah.
which is, I am convinced that I remember the first time that I walked, and I remember being at the kitchen of my household and sort of propping myself up on the door, and then like standing, and my parents getting very excited, and then I walked to my mother and I hugged her, and my father was there at the table as well, and they both got very excited. And I remember the joy that they had at my walking, and I think I was aware, like, I did something different and special, and this is a change, and this is an upgrade. After that,
Well, that's good, Carl.
okay,
Let's move on. The one is enough because we got so much time.
okay, because I'm ready to go into every memory I ever had, Jerry. So David wants to stop me. It might have
Well,
taken
this
the
this
number of
is
years I've been alive as I show off my memory and say, year one,
this
year
is
two,
related.
year two,
Briefly,
I had a tantrum. Year
yeah.
three, I was on Broadway screaming. Year four, okay.
This is briefly, Carl. Tell me someone within your immediate family who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model, and what specifically was that impact? Just briefly, and then outside your immediate family, same question.
Okay, well, the family is easy, and I told you we something would probably lead us to mom. My mom had a tremendous impact on me. She was brilliantly funny. The funniest woman I've ever met when it comes to repartee. Now, I say that having lived in a world of comics and performers. I have had the good fortune to have been exposed to and perform with brilliant improvisational comics, um, about roughly 50% of them female. And some of them do extraordinary things on stage, and I've seen extraordinary stand ups. I've never met anybody who line by line was as funny as my mom. And by the way, just a little bit of detail. She wrote one-liners among many different things that she did in her career for Joan Rivers and Rodney Dangerfield.
How
Um,
cool.
and so my mom not only had the influence of basically raising another comic in her image. Um, and by the way, notice my God illusion. Feel free to bring Christopher Hitchens onto this StreamYard. I'm ready to fight with him. And, and but not only did she influence me, it not only did she create me funny, but not the same funny as her. I am nowhere near as funny conversationally as she were, even though I made you laugh a few times here. I'm proud to say, but um, differently funny. But what she did was when she was dying young, which she did, um, she used that opportunity to say, I had graduated from college and I was afraid of becoming a performer. And I took the first bird in a hand job that I got, which was in a marketing and sales promotion company. And my mom, when she had ovarian cancer and she knew she was passing away, she said to me, "Life is short, duh." And she pointed at her belly, which was distended from the cancer. And she said, "I know you're not happy at that company. Do what you want." And it took me a little bit of time to transition, even to the point where um, I was staying on training the person who was taking over for me so long that my boss one day came up to me and he said, "Carl, don't take this the wrong way, but didn't you say you were leaving?" And I said, "Well, I got to train Marsha." And he goes, "You've been very dedicated to Marsha. She's going to have to learn on her own from this point on." And so at first I thought I'll try it for 6 months. I'll try performing. And I didn't get jobs, but I kept getting callbacks. I kept getting good feedbacks from auditions. And then there came some point where I thought, I'm in, too late to turn back. Probably not going to go to law school at, some advanced age, even though occasionally I've even thought about it just to maybe like make my dad happy in heaven. But I'm doing another thing to make him happy recently, which is I'm reading The Power Broker by Robert Caro about Robert Moses. And my father had read that encyclopedia-sized book. I remember like him spending a year reading it, and now I'm reading it.
Cool. That was well done. So outside
Hold
your
on,
music.
outside of my home, right?
Yep.
Outside of my home, I could mention several. The aforementioned boss of that marketing and sales promotion company saw a cable show that I did with a friend way back when. It was a sports comedy show, and he said to me, "Carl, your dad is a great guy, but he doesn't understand how talented you are." And he encouraged me to pursue my talent as well. And then once I found improv and fell in love with improvisation, there was a woman named Carol Schindler who I thought was just so brilliant and so extraordinary as an improviser that it's like, let me follow in your path. What must I do, master? And so and not just because she is a brilliant improviser, which she is extraordinary, but maybe because like my mother and like what I admire, I thought she was deeply kind and interesting and always searching, whether it was spiritually, whether it was the latest show or book that she had read. So she once said to a class, doing more improv won't necessarily make your life better, but living more life will definitely make your improv better because you will have more to draw on. You will be a more complete person. And then that same sentiment was repeated by Amy Poehler a number of years later when I took a class with her, the actress and comic Amy Poehler. And she at the time said, like, I just read the Harry Potter book, and that was new at the time. And she said, it's amazing, and you should all read this. And basically, acting students will sometimes just study play after play and do acting scene after acting scene. And I have now taken this baton and run with it, where I say, if there's a Q&A, I say, read, experience things, live your life. That will make you a better actor, better writer, better improviser. Sorry, you want to get a question and I keep going on too long.
No, that was a perfect lead in. So you sort of, implied this. The question is, what was the tipping point for you to pursue your career as a writer, improviser, and a lyricist? And I thought, if I was at a party and I met Carl, I'd say, I'm a humorist. And you use all these other things. But with comedy, where, besides your mom, who was it, like a tipping point person you're like, oh, I can do that? I mean, it sounds like your mom's the main one, but was there anyone else that you were seeing on TV, or a friend, or anyone else who said, oh, I can do that as my career?
I'm watching Cisco pitter pat, said I can do that. I can do that. Sorry, little riff from a chorus line.
Yeah.
Yes. So give me 1 second. I'm just going to mute for 5 seconds, Jerry.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. You looked away, but I blew my nose. And it's because, as Eddie Murphy says, voicing Donkey in Shrek, like, you got me all emotional, Jerry, talking about my mom. Tipping point. I'll say a tipping point happened as early as 4 years old. I told you I had early memories, lots of early memories. The first routine I ever did was doing an impersonation of our washing machine. And I used to make the noises that would make filling up, having the water go in, going ka-chunk, ka-chunk, and then going into the agitate cycle, rim, 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 then the spin, and then I would spin around, which was very fun at 4. Now I would, lose consciousness and fall down. But the family would laugh and relatives would laugh. And it's like, I think almost every comic has this. It's like, ooh, I need this. I have to do this. But then that kept happening. In 3rd grade, which I only attended for 2 months, and then went on to the 4th grade, long story, but a fun story of obsessive compulsiveness. Teacher asked, does anybody know what a weather report is like? And I said, I do. And I came to the front of the room and I did an impersonation of this line you could call to get a weather report. And the class laughed, and the teacher made me sit down because, God forbid somebody got a laugh. Somehow that was radical. That was disruptive. And it's so crazy when you think about that, because I went precipitation probability 70%, because this woman had this kind of voice, and kids are all laughing, and it's like, teacher's like, sit down, sit down. But why? Why was that disruptive? Craziness, crazy need for teachers to keep control.
Yeah.
And that was a theme that happened other times in my life. I was constantly in detention because I would call out a joke in junior high school. My 6th grade teacher wrung my neck on the first day of school because I made a joke that made the whole class laugh. And when school was over, she said, don't you ever do that again in my class. Like it was a threat to her. And I shut down the whole year, and then was reborn again in 7th grade, and got a class clown certificate from my teacher, who appreciated my humor. So this was an ongoing pattern of teachers repressing or teachers embracing. So tipping point was the teachers that accepted me as I was, and there were many along the way. There were more probably that did accept me as I was than the ones who tried to repress. And but the ones who tried to repress, they live on in infamy. And let's see, who else tipping points? I think just a child had spent listening to comedy albums thinking, I want to do that, not necessarily thinking I could, except that I think I knew I could because I was doing bits and pieces, not whole hog, but bits and pieces of comedy my whole life. So I was class poet in 8th grade, but I wrote comedy poems for this 221. That was the number of our room, 221 Gazette. I was always acting in shows and doing the comedy roles. So I knew it from a young age. And I would say, this is corny, if it takes a village, the whole village let me know mostly that I was funny.
That's good. What's the function of laughter?
Sometimes recognition, like I get it. I'm on the same wavelength as you. I've heard it said like, oh, it releases tension. I think it's social. It's socially connective. We're all in on the same joke. We're all of the same tribe. We are bonded through this. We are bonded in our rebelliousness that is usually, but not always, there are interesting levels of it. Usually a balm, BALM, rather than a BOMB. But I think it can be both. So where it's a balm is you're hurting, you're an oppressed people, you need to just share like, hey, I know it, you know it, we all know it. We don't have the tools that Jerry asks us about to dismantle the master's house, but this is one we have to feel better while we're working at the master's house. And then the BOMB is comedy is and can be subversive. So yeah, there are some comedians that might just say, here's a waka waka joke, but there are others like a George Carlin who's like, here's what's wrong with society, here's what's wrong with the culture, here's what's absurd, here's what's insane, here's where religion is oppressing you, and you're like illuminated, like, oh my God, yeah, I see what he's saying. I now think differently, and that's radical and that's transformative. But again, that's got to combine like a chemical, like two chemicals that are inert by themselves, but then you pour them together and boom, that's got to combine with activism, with, but the knowledge is often the first part. And comedy can often be that first knowledge, that first awareness, or that reinforcement of something you were thinking and it was nagging at you, but you weren't sure. Like, is it just me, or am I, or is that thing that everybody else saying ridiculous? And sometimes there's non-funny comedy, which might be an oxymoron, but I think that falls under the category of dark humor and, again, maybe just educational humor of, oh, I see. I'm not going to laugh out loud, but that's smart and I'm processing it. I will say to people, I sometimes enjoy the comedians more at a comedy club that I don't laugh at than the ones that I do laugh at. The ones that I do laugh at are almost like aggressively like, and here's a joke, and I'm looking at you, and you gotta go, ha. And the ones that are more intellectual, I'm going, oh, that's brilliant. Oh, that I see what you're saying. Oh, it's an insight. It's more like, being in a Baptist church and going like, yes, brother. Yes, you tell it. That's good. So
That's good, Carl. That was really good. And you predicted you must have ESP the next two questions. And this one is, can satire be destructive? But let me
I have
just
a
set,
hacker. I have a hacker who went into your computer and told me the questions ahead of time.
Woo!
Sorry.
Yeah, this question is, can satire be destructive? But I do want to set it up a little context. Jonathan Swift compared satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own. So, satire is, you know, sort of more, maybe more what you were talking about when the comic is saying something intellectual. I really loved you gravitating towards them. So, when I asked my friend who wrote for Mork and Mindy, can satire be destructive? He said, that's the job of satire. Now, most people say, like I say, well, yeah, it can be destructive because if you do a cartoon in one country and they kill you, some people think dying is destructive. But I would like you just to suss out that, can satire be destructive? And you sort of touched on it, but what's your
I,
feeling?
I
Yeah.
think I think I covered it to a large
Yeah.
extent. I think I have answered that. Well, it depends how you mean destructive. Destructive is also constructive. Sometimes you need to knock something down in order to build up the replacement.
Yeah.
So satire can be either, and who's wielding it. So I every once in a while I'm envious that somebody else put an idea into the public consciousness that I had before them. And one of those things was the movie Bob Roberts. Don't know if you
Yeah.
remember it, but
Yes.
I used to write sort of these left wing parodies for the improv group I was part of, Chicago City Limits. And they were social and political parodies and satire. But it occurred to me that, hey, I could write right wing parodies if I felt that way.
Yeah.
Or wouldn't it be funny to write right wing parodies just to be a provocateur? And this thought also came to my mind because one day we were doing an improv game that's a one word at a time story, which means like if you and I did it, you and I would go back and forth where I'd say always and you'd say look
Yeah.
at the. And so the way the words came down, it sounded like we gave an answer as a four people who were doing it that seemed like we were, and it's interesting how appropriate this conversation is for today. It seemed like we were um, pro-life instead of pro-choice. And afterwards, this one woman in the cast said to me, we're pro-choice at Chicago City Limits. And even though I was pro-choice, I was offended by her saying that to me. I said, oh, I didn't know there were set beliefs that were, that had to be, put on stage as part of this cult. I thought it was a very ignorant thing to say to me because there should be no, it's there were different minds on stage, and yes, was there an overall ethos that was left leaning of the company? There certainly was. And again, as I say, I was pro-choice, but if I was pro-life, I would think you don't get to keep me from saying that on stage. The director, which she wasn't, could say I'm uncomfortable with you espousing that opinion or whatever. But anyway, so where I was going with all of this is what is the satire aimed at? It could be right-wing satire aimed at, oh, look at those, um, stupid lefties who want to feed the homeless. So, I could write satire about that and put down, people that are at the lowest levels of the culture. I choose not to do that. But there are people who do.
Yep.
And this comes back to something you said before with Sam and Dave. It's a very difficult ethical issue. I feel for people who have to eat and put a roof over their head when they need to take a job to survive. I don't know what their bank account is, and in a perfect world, you'd just be able to give the finger to someone you didn't respect asking you to work for them. But sometimes you think like, that's where the money is and I got to do it. But it's a very dangerous, slippery slope. And the higher it gets, you're promoting something that's very damaging.
Yeah,
So
it's still Patty Smith just did full page ad in Wall Street Journal and New York Times selling luggage. So I asked all my punk friends, what do you think? 99% said, well, she might need the money. And they said, well, you don't know what she's giving the money to. And like 2 or 3 goes, that's not punk aesthetic. That's like selling out. So, I wasn't to judge her. I was just saying, let's talk about this. And it was interesting how few people felt like I did, but I just wanted to survey people and get their feeling. But the other question is, McLuhan loved to quote Steve Allen's, behind every joke, there's a grievance. I have a little problem with every joke, but just your feelings on that. Behind jokes, there's a grievance. Any reaction to that thought?
I think you can cut the joke pie into many different sections, and I think a big slice of that pie is grievance, but I think other times it's attention must be paid, to take the Willy Loman line from Death of a Salesman. So sometimes it's attention must be paid. Sometimes, um, occasionally it's playing with language. I mean, George Carlin plays with language, and mostly it's a grievance, but sometimes it's pointing out an inconsistency. A so it's not necessarily grievance. Sometimes it's just, isn't this crazy that this word can mean this, but it can also mean this. Um, and and so sometimes it's a spotlight, sometimes it's illumination. Jerry Seinfeld does a lot of that. You
Yeah.
ever notice blank, and then he's letting you notice something.
Yeah.
Um, when he
It's
says, for instance, that rooting for a baseball team, you're rooting for the laundry, because players get traded. It's like there's no loyalty. Da da da. He's illuminating, saying, is it a grievance?
yeah.
Maybe he's grieving that the player doesn't stay with the team his whole career, but it's also just like, take a look at this in case you never noticed.
Yeah. And one friend recently said, though, actually, a guy who wrote for Carlin, comedy writer, told me, well, Steve Allen was of a certain era. And that's what that era was. Oh, my wife or my mother-in-law, and they complain. But I'll tell you a funny story about Mark Maron. I booked him in our little art gallery in Venice way before he was famous in our politically incorrect comedy series. And he got there, and we're supposed to be bitching about Bush and political events, and he starts bitching that there's homeless people outside the window. And I'm like, I told the guy who helped get him, I says, I why is he bitching about that? He's supposed to bitching about this. And he goes, comics bitch about everything. And it was an eye opener for me. And that was good, because it was like, look at this is the bigger picture on comedy.
Yeah, and it
So
sounds like he was exercising his right to free speech and also to be very impromptu. Like that's what he saw, that's what he wanted to speak on.
yeah.
And,
But Carl, tell me, you've done this for many years. You tell me one major element that's changed in your creative process and one major element that stayed the same. And you can feel free with what creative process means in your process, in your
I think the thing that stayed the same, which I'll start with, is I'm trying to be funny.
yeah.
Maybe what's changed is sometimes trying to have more meaning. I mean, that's kind of the path that I think Woody Allen went on, and I don't think I'm as deep as where he went with his movies. Um, because there's something I want to write now that I would still try to make comic, but it's a very serious topic, based on something that happened to me, and I don't even know that I'll get to it. This may be people will watch this 20 years from now and say, "What's he talking about? He never did anything like this." But And the show that I did this past Sunday was very just full of shtick. But I want to try to, as I go through different incarnations of it, I want to try to give it a little more um, base, a little more depth. Um, what's something that's changed? I noticed over the years, and I think you asked about me specifically, and this is not about me. This was about the industry. Just as you said, things used to be different, more comedy about grievance. Um, but again, I still think that's a staple of comedy. That used to be like an impressionist, for instance, could just do an impression. Say, I think if Ed Sullivan were doing this interview, it would sound something like this. And they turn around and then like, thank you, Jerry, and they do Ed Sullivan. But now, then there came a point like in the 80s and 90s where everything had to be ironic. You
Yeah.
could not just say I want to do an impression. You'd have it's like oh, like if I were a bad impressionist, I'd do Ed Sullivan like this. Next up is Elvis Presley, and it's like you had to apologize for it because otherwise you weren't cool. But you were but what I noticed is, but you're still doing an Ed Sullivan impersonation. So like you're bullshit, and either do it or don't do it. But look, someone's allowed to frame, their comedy however they want. What else has changed in my comedy? I think just the morphing of what you want to talk about and where you want to go. So early on in my career, anything that came up in the news, I was happy to make a joke about. And now, as I'm getting older, it's like, well, I'd like to tell a story. I'd like to piece it all together into something. And I did so many years of improvisation, Jerry, that one of the things I realized was like, oh, I want to leave something behind, even though we haven't talked about afterlife or anything like that, or legacy. But I think like I'd like to have something that somebody can actually watch, because otherwise, I wrote more than 200 song parodies. I've got like one that you saw up on my website or something. You saw, I'm the Dole Man, and then there are 100 parodies that I'm more proud of than that one, even though I like that one. Although I did get a complaint letter for that one,
That's when you know you're a success. But look we're running out of time, and this was really good because you're gonna be able to cover that a little more too. But it's what's more important, conviction or compromise?
Oh, I like that question. And you've asked many great questions, Jared. I don't want you to think any other question wasn't beautiful and wonderful. See, this is very much me. I can't just I worried that you would think that you would feel insecure about the other questions if I only complimented one. Fiction or compromise? Oh, I think we're going to get the that I'm going to drive down the center of the road on this one. I think
that's all right.
Maybe because I'm reading the book about Robert Moses that I just mentioned called The Power Broker. He had conviction at the beginning of his career and was kind of a purist, and he was able to get nothing done. And then he started learning how politics worked, and all of a sudden he went too far in the other way. He sort of became this bully, this tyrant. I'm not hugely far into the book, so I don't know how it all goes yet. But he went from conviction to compromise, in that he was compromising his principles, but he got a lot of stuff done. The world is filled with people on this spectrum. Some people who've had pure conviction and have been able to accomplish amazing things. There are other people that accomplish things through compromise. When we were talking, and I'm going to keep coming back to it, about Sam and Dave performing for Trump, I had an opportunity at one point, and then it fell through. I thought I was going to be doing these videos for a cigarette company, and I'm an ardent anti-smoker. And I thought, well, do I just say no because I don't believe in smoking? And what I decided was somebody's going to do this job. Not every actor in New York is going to say no to this job. If I say no to it on conviction, I'm not accomplishing anything except if I want to have a pure heart. So what I determined was I will say yes to the job and I will give 20% to an anti-smoking organization. Um, and that was my balance between conviction and compromise. That one was arbitrary. There are others where, I try to keep my convictions, but occasionally to get something done, you need to compromise. And it happens with every show. I'm supposed to have the last word in theater, whereas in movies, like the producer can say, "Nope, we're replacing, you know, uh, Mahatma Gandhi with a buxom blonde because it'll sell better." And but in theater, I'm supposed to have the last word, but I can still undo myself by having a director say, "Well, I can't work with this guy because he doesn't want to compromise, he doesn't want to change anything." Um, and it's like, what's your breaking point? So maybe it's like the judge of a person is how far is too far? Where will they finally say no? And that takes us to the Milgram experiments. When are you going to stop shocking someone?
Yeah.
When they're screaming or before you even give a single shock?
It's
Or
really
not
good.
at all?
Yeah. Really good.
People.
Carl, you really brought a lot up there, but you got to hear Paul Schrader, guy who wrote Taxi Driver, said the role of the artist is to attempt to sell out but fail. Now that's a cute saying because it's like, oh, I'm so pure to my art. I tried to sell out, but I couldn't. So most people like that quote, but some know there's a little deeperness to that. Like, what?
Well, it's kind of a mind bender because
Yeah.
you would expect it to be the other way around, and I almost have to think about it. Artists try to sell out but fail. I do love that.
Yeah.
I,
No,
I
it is.
I think I'm maybe the other way around. Like I want to be pure, and I'll fail at that. I want to be all conviction, and I will fail and
Yeah.
and sell out a little bit. But yeah, yeah.
Well, that's perfect lead into this. Alice Walker said, because we both brought up our mothers, how much they influence us. She said, "Yes, mother, I can see you are flawed. You have not hidden it. That is your greatest gift to me." I mean, that is really powerful. And it leads right into Moshe Feldenkrais says that, how do we can turn a weakness into a strength that normally we're taught to overcome a weakness. So tell me a weakness you've morphed into a strength.
Well, at risk of being redundant, welcome to comedy.
Yeah.
Most comics have some kind of insecurity
Yeah.
or their weakness is that they can't change all the things they're disgruntled about in the world or all the things they think are unfair, absurd. And they say, I'm going to make my power, my strength, the ability to galvanize people over it through humor, at least just laugh about it over humor, or at least just share this moment and ease my own cognitive dissonance that this exists by relaxing everybody a little bit because we're expelling air, we're laughing.
Yeah. That's conspire, breathe together. So fill in the blank, Carl. Anger can be a productive emotion when.
It's accompanied by an AK-47. um, but in the right hands, um, uh, the anger can be what?
Can be a productive emotion when.
It leads to action.
Yeah.
And again, it depends who's angry at what and what their action is. Because yeah, it can lead, as my dark joke goes, to somebody shooting up, a synagogue
Yeah.
or a disco, or it can lead to somebody changing the world.
Yeah.
In a good way. And look, in the ever conflicted way of humanity, what I consider somebody changing the world in a good way is somebody else's, oh, that sucks. I wish, the other side had won World War II, or I wish, there hadn't been freedom for oppressed peoples, because I could sure use some workers at $0 an hour. So depends what side you're looking at.
Yeah, at our art gallery, we would say, "How much are we not paying you? Double that."
Well, I have two interns. I'm making jokes about the people that would not want slavery to end and how horrible that is, and yet I have two interns, which is sort of, well, it's a barter. It's a barter. It's not. It's
I
not.
like that. I need an intern. How do you find peace of mind?
I don't. Um, I walk a lot, Jerry, and I'm going to be pathetic, so don't let it end on this response, because I'm about to be really really sad. I I I I I improvise in many different ways, and one of them is singing songs,
Yeah,
and one that I've sort of riffed on, is there ain't enough miles to walk away my pain. So there are some difficult things that have happened in my life, and I can walk 6 miles, 7 miles, 8 miles a night, which I often do, and it's not enough when I'm upset about something. It helps, getting my body in motion helps, but it doesn't undo it. What was the question again?
no, you answered it because
I
it's
know, but I want.
I will tell you it, but it feeds in perfectly the next. It was, how do you find peace of mind?
Okay. But let me give a little more on that before
Okay.
it feeds into the next, which is, um, it goes back to where we started. I find peace of mind through relationships,
Yeah,
um, through connecting to another human being, through both physically and intellectually, and um, and I find peace of mind, um, by as much as possible not trying to you know, be evil. Is that Google's motto? Don't be evil.
yeah,
Um, but again, it's my interpretation of what don't be evil is.
yeah. If you were walking down the street today and
Hmm.
you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
I'd say um, I'd say you've got one more year of Hebrew school left. Um, Tell your parents you'd rather have piano lessons, which they would have happily given me, but I don't know if they would have traded Hebrew school out. What would I have said to my 12-year-old self? Oh, again, you're making me sad, Jerry. I'm going to be so depressed. There'll be no peace of mind after this. Which you want me
But
to
you
have?
already answered it, Carl. You
You already
said
answered how to find peace of mind. Yes, I'm going to have sex and connect
you answered
intellectually
the
with.
walking down the no, you answered walking down the street as a 12-year-old. You said the
I did,
piano.
but I'm
Yeah,
going to give you another answer.
that's fine.
That was my joke answer. Even
Yeah,
though there is a serious message in that as well, because I regret not sticking with my
yeah,
piano lessons. And what I regret, which is why I gave that answer, but now I just want to explain it more fully, is the deeper message of what I was saying to my 12-year-old self is be more of an advocate for yourself. Try to both have some foresight as to what will be valuable to you later on, but also whenever you want, don't feel like you have to just obey your teachers, just obey your parents. Um, I Look, I'm a fighter and I have fought many things in my life, but I would have liked to have multiplied that even more and starting even at a younger age. The teacher that grabbed me by the back of the neck and shook me, I wish I had gone to my parents and said, I don't, you will please have a talk with this teacher with me. This is not okay. And I won't be repressed, or put me in another school or another class in the school. Except I knew I was kind of in the smart kid class. So I didn't want to dumb down being in another class. And I don't think and only real weirdos in that day and age, outliers. I shouldn't say weirdos. Real outliers in that day and age would do a thing like homeschooling. That was
Yeah.
very rare. Now it's on the radar. So I don't think I would have known to say to my parents, "I'll just read for the next year and I'll be better off."
Yeah.
Um, and But yeah, I wish that in so many different places in my life, and again, I have been, Jerry, but I need to multiply it times 4 or 5,
Yeah.
more aggressive, more immediate, and as slow as life can be. There are cliches about how long life is. There are cliches about how quickly it all goes by. Just knowing, like, wait, you can't wait till you're more ready. You're ready enough, or get ready really fast, like when opportunities come up. And because there are times that I've had opportunities to submit to major shows, and it's like, oh, I'm really busy with this other thing. I'll get to that next month. And then I don't, or didn't. And so get to it, do it. And even as a 12-year-old, like, start doing everything in comedy. Do stand up at 12-year-old. Start writing pieces, collecting these pieces, creating shows. I wish I had a mentor, and I had a great comedy mentor in my mother and my uncle, also super funny. The family was funny, but I didn't have a business mentor. I didn't have a life coach mentor, and I still need that to this day. So if you have somebody great for me, fix me up.
Yeah, that was beautiful. So talk about time. We've got four more minutes if we go 90. Can you go another 10 or 15, or what do you want to do?
Um, my voice is starting to run out, but I can go a little further. I can also lower my voice,
How
and
about
I can do another one with you, Jerry, if you want.
we could do a part two. That would be fine. But can you do another 5 minutes or 10? Just
At least let's try it. And if I say,
okay.
I gotta
Well,
go.
we can wrap it up pretty soon, and there's only a few more here. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Um, I'll go neither. It should be one of those Japanese things that's shooting water up your butthole.
I have had that answer about once in 40 years. That's good.
And I'm going to give you more answer, because I like something that isn't frying my neurons because it's so complex. Even though I also appreciate that about you, Jerry. I want to give you another answer about the toilet paper. It should come off both ways, and whichever way it comes off, you should be enjoying it. You should be thinking about it. You should be delighting in it. You should be making designs out of it. And you should be experimenting. You should sometimes be having it this way, the way it's sometimes in a bathroom. It's not on the roll, and you're just going like, woo, like it's that rhythmic gymnastics thing with the spinny thing. And and other times you could bowl it.
I
And
like it. I
Anyway,
have not ever had that answer, Carl. That is a
that's
good
why
answer.
I wanted to add more on.
I
I
like it.
had a feeling.
If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
My autobiography. It's you asked an improviser off the top of his head, and this is what happens. But in your instructions, you also said I could take some time with some questions.
That's totally okay.
Not important enough to read about, but I wrote this book anyway. Yeah, and but I wrote this book anyway.
Very good. They want to scent the glue in the
Or
binding.
or
Yeah.
hold on, or I always love that police line when they're trying to shoot people away. Nothing to see here, folks.
Yeah, nothing to see here, folks. That's good. The publisher wants to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
Um, I would like it to be a variety of smells as you move down each inch, starting with like Aramis, Paco Rabanne, Eau Sauvage. And the reason I want it that way is like it'll be a testament to some younger age when I thought this would actually lead women to sleep with me, as opposed to like, as long as you don't have BO, the more important thing is accomplishment and
Right,
being gregarious and connective.
right. No, I like yeah, I figure you must have encountered Paul Krasner's political comedy over the years.
Not
No?
actually not familiar with that name.
At some point you should because he would say, "In my era, we could get laid if we said, if you could play the Beatles' Blackbird on guitar, tell them you got a copy of The Prophet, and we'll go read The Prophet together, and that To Kill a Mockingbird is your favorite movie." So, I like that sort of
Yeah.
template because I'd love for every generation to fill in the blank. What would you say for the book, the song you play, and the movie?
I remember my sister telling me when I have an older sister, so she was always like the good advice for women. And I remember at one point she said, like, Carl, be a good dancer and know how to give a good back rub.
Oh, that is good advice. Back massage is one of the most important. So that's what we'll do our second, salon on because this was the interview. We'll do a salon someday on how to pick up women. No, no. We'll be canceled forever then. Okay, along that
For,
line
for for a neurotic guy with lots of regrets and not a ton of money, I've actually been very proud of the amazing women that have been in my life. Um,
that's good. So if you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
I would rewind your show, Jerry, and say, "Ask me another question." Um,
That's a good I I had one person mid question say, "Stop," and, it is from an elderly Altacocker who's you would appreciate. He taught me that question, and it's like a metaphor, something we talked about, for
oh,
life, that life
sure,
can be like that.
sure. No, no, no. And I can give you an answer too.
You don't have to, but if you want to.
Um, I might start singing, "Happy days are here again. The sky is filled with cheer again. Da,
That's
da,
good.
da, 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 da. Happy days are here again." Or
Beautiful.
when you're smiling, when you're smiling, any upbeat song would be appropriate at that point.
Well, I'll tell you, my favorite answer ever was a woman on the Venice boardwalk. She said, "I'd take the velocity of the bag of shit coming at my face and I'd use it to swoop my way out of the vat of vomit." And I said, "That is Descent into the Maelstrom by uh, Edgar Allan Poe. The same thing. The sailor's boat is smushed by the whirlpool. He watches the broken parts of the boat going down into the whirlpool, and instead he uses them to swoop his way out of the whirlpool and saves his life." So
It's also jujitsu. It's redirecting
it's
energy.
exactly what it is. It's judo and jujitsu. It's like pushing, like how that's really good. I use that metaphor
But I
jujitsu.
could keep answering that question. The other thing would be to start doing like a little routine, a little stand-up routine, like this is not a good day, folks, but what are you going to do? Uh, you know, uh, not every day you can wear Aramis and Paco Rabanne and Eau Sauvage and smell nice. So um, this.
Okay, Carol, you're on a roll. We're almost done, but this one is a little
But
hard.
am I on a roll from the
Yeah,
top down or from the bottom up?
you're on a seedless roll. No, that we asked Elliot Gould once about the role of the actor, and he says, "Well, there's the seedless role in
Yes.
the, so here's 5 questions from Alan Watts in a few words only. You can answer only in a few words.
Okay.
First one, who started it all?
The process of mitosis.
Nice. Are we going to make it?
Yes. And I think we can make it one more time. Um,
Okay,
um,
the next one. Where do we put it?
depends where you fall on the spectrum. Male, female, non-binary, LGBTQIA plus.
Good. Who's cleaning it up?
In my house, me, and somebody wealthier's house, the maid.
Is it serious?
No, until it's terminal. Everything should be light.
Beautiful. Just a couple more, Carl. We're out of here. This has really been fun. I love this time.
Thank you.
What's a cultural shift that you see developing today that inspires you?
As slow, is this supposed to be just a few words, or is this supposed to be?
No, no, we're done with the Alan
Okay.
Watts. You can go on and
As slow as it is, even as terrible as things still are, I'm partly going with the statistics that there's less war than ever before on the planet, less hunger, less global poverty. What was the question again? Because I know I was giving a positive answer. Oh, what's a positive cultural trend?
No, well, it's what is a cultural shift that you see developing today that inspires you?
Got it. So what
Yeah,
inspires me is that, again, the same start, as slow and as agonizing as the progress is, and all the backsliding, including the recent Supreme Court ruling, um, I think we are getting a little more tolerant of our fellow human.
yeah,
Um, Things that used to be acceptable to broadcast are now either not said or said under the table, um, probably better. And so I think, however fraught, however two steps forward, one step back, I think we are getting better as a species. Um, and I'm probably incredibly naive to believe that, but I like being positive.
that's good. You anticipated the last question, but before the last question is this question. Thornton Wilder wrote Our Town play. He said, "Art is confession. Art is the secret told, but art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time." You've
Mm.
laid your cards on the table for over an hour and a half. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. Carl, what's it really all about for you?
Um, then I'm going to keep trying to kick the football no matter how many times Lucy Brown pulls it away.
That is great.
No,
Good metaphor.
thank you.
Your sister was wise in telling you that, but you just pulled through and kicked another metaphor through the
My, my
goalpost.
my sister is very clever, and she has her way of speaking and
Yeah,
phrasing things. And sometimes she's trying to save me from myself. Other times she's judging and
yeah.
projecting how she would like to be. And I love her regardless of any implicit criticism in that.
Yeah, that's what family's for. Because my older sister taught me an amazing thing. She said, a key to a successful relationship is how you deal with what you don't like about the other person. It's
Mhm.
the how. you know, and it is wise words. But, I'm going to throw in a bonus question because this has been so enlightening. Did you study Martin Buber and Viola Spolin improvising in Chicago, comedy improv? Because that's sort of known as the hub for comedy improv.
So, first of all, I'm aware of Viola Spolin. The other name that you said was what again?
It's Martin Buber. I mispronounce his name. Bauber. He's a Jewish philosopher, and they combined him and Viola Spolin to sort of like not invent but help develop this idea of comedy improv in Chicago.
So I'm not familiar with the other gentleman. At first, I thought you were referring to the philosopher Buber.
That, that's it. It's the philosopher.
Oh, I think it's pronounced Buber.
It's
Martin.
Bauber. Buber. You're right.
Oh, I
Yes.
thought it was just BU. Now I tempted
Nope,
to
I
look
could
this
be
up.
wrong. I could have misspelled it. You're right. Okay.
Um,
But
and
more but anyways, what do you know about Viola Spolin's influence on the development of comedy improv?
yeah, just to be as obnoxious as possible, Jerry, it's Martin Buber, Buber. That's why you threw me off. Who wrote I and Thou?
Buber. Thank you for correcting me. You're absolutely right.
Um,
Buber. That's right.
See, the problem is, Jerry, I'm just too well educated. So if you get something wrong, it's like does not compute. I'm not as well educated, I think, as you. You have had so many wonderful references to writers and philosophers. So I'm aware of Viola Spolin as being the seminal beginning figure of improv. I was not aware, although I'd like to see a documentary that's out about Viola Spolin. I was not aware of her being inspired or using the works of Martin Buber. And I studied with a group called Chicago City Limits, where their seminal improv guru was Del Close. And
Yeah.
Del Close also inspired a very popular recent group called Upright Citizens Brigade.
Yeah.
And so there have been many generations of improv with it morphing and changing and getting more and more
Yeah.
sophisticated as it goes. But Viola Spolin is the mama.
Yeah.
She began it all by creating theater games for children, and
That's
then
it.
grown-ups realized that they could use these games to write on the spot and conceptualize things and play in the same way. And as I say, it got more and more sophisticated. Early improv groups would like huddle and talk about ideas and then go do them. Now, you just call something out and people can immediately create, a 90-minute one-act play with a dozen different characters on the spot if they're good enough.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I might have misspoke. I didn't mean she used Martin. I think it might have been a combination. But Del Close just had a documentary about him. Did you see that?
I haven't, and again, it's also on my list.
Yeah, yeah. No, I did study that doc and I really appreciate it. But I know a lot of people who studied there and they have their opinions of the doc and all the politics of what people do.
Mhm.
So, in closing, Carl, this has been truly enlightening. I've had such a good time, but believe me, I learned a lot too. It's like dueling quotes. Like when you drop Willie Loman's quote, attention must be paid. I'm like, wow, I'm going to use that one in the future. Then it'll make me sound intelligent. Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you if you ever heard this because you had something to do with Eric Bogosian.
Yes.
I have to tell you, I sat with Eric. He did a play with Frank Zappa, and I sat
Ah,
with Eric in
mhm.
Frank's living room and listened to the radio play.
Totally cool.
It's called oh, it's an amazing thing. But that talk radio, that was a great coup for you to be the voice of the call-in,
Appreciate
and
it.
I love it in your reel. And it reminded me of that joke where the poor man is begging for money outside the rich theater uh, in New York City, and the rich people are coming out of the theater. And the poor guy goes up to the rich theater goer and says, do you have any spare change? And the theater goer does some quote. I'm not well versed in Shakespeare, but it's some quote to like fluff off the poor man. And then the theater goer says, blah, 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 blah. That's Shakespeare. And the bum goes, fuck you. That's Mamet.
Love it.
Good comeback.
Well, a really proud moment as a dad was when my son was very young. I taught him double, double, boil and trouble, fire burn, and cauldron bubble. And I said, that's Shakespeare. It's from Macbeth. So one day he's out in a playground with there's another mother from one of his school companions, and she says double, double, boil and trouble. Somehow it just comes out in the context of whatever's going on. And one of the kids says, where's that from? And I think she didn't want to bother to explain. And she goes, I made it up. And my son says, no, you didn't. That's Shakespeare.
Wow, that's classy.
So I love that she was trying to claim credit for Shakespeare, and he busted her.
So you're the person who wrote all Shakespeare's stuff.
Yes.
That's like Emo Phillips. They said, where were you when Kennedy got shot? He goes, I have no alibis.
Funny.
Okay, Carl, last question. What gives you the most optimism?
Knowing that I will see my girlfriend tomorrow.
Ah, that is a good answer. I like that.
Well, again, it comes back to what I said at the beginning. It's human contact. It's life energy, and like talking with you, Jerry. It's talking to somebody fascinating and wonderful, and she's as good looking as you are. She's even a little better looking.
But it's beautiful. Let me tell you how the whole interview is constructed. The first question is, what's the best thing for a human being? I learned that from someone who studied Wilhelm Reich. And she said, the best thing for a human being is another human being.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last question is, what gives you the most optimism? Well, here's somebody you imitated once. They asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life, what gives you the most optimism? And he said, other people. So that's the framing on the whole interview, So it's amazing,
Well, Jerry, it depends what other people you're talking about.
Who are you going to believe, my Zoom or your Zoom?
Yeah.
Carl, what a pleasure. I'm going to hit the end button, but I don't ever want our discussion or time together to end. So
thank you, Jerry. Do you still have an art gallery in Venice?
No, but I used to produce events at all kinds of venues, and I was lucky because I did produce events at Sponto Gallery in Venice for 7 years, and it's the venue where the Beats were born, Kerouac and Ginsberg. So it really had sacred ground. Then I do them at Beyond Baroque, which is another poetry center. But since COVID, to tell you the truth, I switched all my events online, and they're better online. People are more attentive and they're more present. So I still see people live, and that's good. But yeah, I'm not really currently producing money events live.
And Jerry, I'm going to do to you what you did to me, which is say, I have one last question 12 times in a row.
Sure.
Which is, but I think this is my last question. Has someone interviewed you?
Oh yeah, there's several, and I appreciate that. Okay. And if you were asking that about if you ever come out here, I can help you, like, get a suggest venues for you, or, do, you know, uh,
Thank you. I just meant I thought you had an art gallery, and if I was out there, I would have liked to have visited it.
yeah. Well, you're always welcome to Venice. Venice is one big art gallery,
I
and
appreciate that.
I can give you a great tour of our great town. There's a lot of roots in, George Carlin used to live here, and
Oh,
I actually worked for George for 1 year, so I was really lucky, and,
well,
yeah.
he lived here too, if we're being competitive.
That's it. He did he
Because he
because, I went to his 60th birthday party, and
mm,
they had the stoop that he grew up on constructed out of a set, so that was part of the party. You could go sit on his stoop.
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I should rest my voice.
Thanks,
Um,
Carl.
thank
And
you.
I gotta give kudos to one. I think it was Flash Rosenberg who introduced us,
That's
correct?
correct.
So big kudos to Flash. Thank you so much, Carl.
Thank you, Jerry. Take care. Bye.